But again, we have resources there that we can look at energy generation, and we're building on technology to capture different things. And that's what we did with the Four Corners Power Plant. Our land, because our land is important. Our culture is important. My idea here is, how do I get our young people back home?
The core focus for Whatislife.blog, the podcast series, is to connect intricate moments of humanity, which thus exposes the beauty of us. We believe that all humans contain a story, and that alone is worth sharing. Welcome back to Whatislife.blog, the podcast series. I'm your host, Charles Horace, and today's guest is Arvin Trujillo. Arvin, it is an honor to have you on the show.
Well, thank you, Charles. It's been quite a while since we've seen each other, but it's good to be here with you.
Exactly. How are you feeling today?
Right now, I'm feeling pretty good, stepping out, running for the Navajo Nation President has been something that's been kind of out of my comfort zone, but it's a really learning experience for me, and I'm really enjoying it.
Right on. And we are here
we're in Fruitland.
Fruitland, right. Just outside of Farmington, or in between Farmington and Shiprock, right?
That's correct.
Wow. Okay. So you're running for presidency.
Yes, I am.
How did you get into that?
Well, really, it was just looking at things that I've been working on. I've been working on projects previously employed by NTEC, the Navajo Transitional Energy Company. We're working on a big project there. I'm working on a railroad project with the San Juan County and the state of New Mexico. It was looking for a candidate that could really help me in those areas and really look at energy development and economic development, and really wasn't real satisfied with individuals that I heard and some that I've talked to and et cetera. So, through that process and talking with others, I was kind of convinced to throw my hat in.
And you said you've been under multiple presidencies. How many would you say?
I've been under 3 presidents. I started back in 1999. I was a mining engineer then, working for then BHP Billiton, working the 3 mines that are here in the Four Corners area, Navajo, San Juan, and La Plata. Kelsey Begay was running at that point in time, and he knew my mother, and he knew my wife. And so he happened to come by the house, and we started talking, and we ended up talking late into the night. Lo and behold, he ended up being elected, and then he asked me to join his cabinet. I started with Kelsey Begay in 99. He didn't win re-election in 2003 and 2002, but I was then asked by then President-elect Joe Shirley and Frank Dayish Jr. Frank Dayish to come and join their administration. So I stayed on for an additional 8 years. And then just recently, I was the CEO for Four Corners Economic Development. I left that position, and then I was asked by President Nygren to come and help him out, and I ended up doing that for about a year. And then I came back and started some other opportunities for myself.
Wow. Okay. Now I liked how you said you were not necessarily in the background, but you were there. Like you've witnessed 3 presidencies. You got experience. You have knowledge. You have understanding. So you know the ropes.
Yes.
You know the ropes. I think that's really important.
It is important because again, I hear the discussions out there. I hear the frustrations. I hear the concerns. People are coming out and looking at our 3-branch government system and saying this needs to change, that needs to change. And I agree, there are certain aspects of that we really need to take a look at and possibly amend different things or look at things and make some changes in those areas. But we do have a process in place. And that process, it involves majority vote or supermajority vote. And it's really communicating between the branches. In my case, I was with the executive branch. I was the division director for the Division of Natural Resources. It was me going and members of my staff going, and we spoke to the council delegates. We educated them on what we were doing, why we were doing it, why it was so important. And the better we got that information across, we were able to gain the necessary votes. And again, it's just a majority vote or maybe a supermajority. Granted, some of these projects, we still have people who were not totally convinced that this is the direction we should be going. But we got the majority vote and we moved forward. And so, again, that's what I bring to the table is one, not only understanding how to work through the processes, but also how to communicate and how to really develop partnerships, bringing diverse stakeholders together, finding that common ground so that we all can look at things and say, okay, let's proceed with this project. And I've been involved with a number of major projects with the nation in the past, and I'm looking forward to doing the same in the future.
I like that. I like that. It really, kind of boils down to teamwork makes the dream work, right?
That's right.
I like that. That's pretty cool. Now, you said that your focus is on reconnecting, kind of building the bridges back with these 3 divisions and 3 branches,
yes.
Right?
The thing that I look at, or the perspective that I look at, is that if our branches are not working together, nothing is getting done. You've got the legislative branch that should be focused on policy and legislation. You have the executive branch that is focused on executing that policy and the legislation. You have a judicial branch that begins to look at the law and how does that stand as far as the operations of the government. But right now, we're not seeing that. And in my opinion, in some cases, we got the legislative branch trying to go in and manage the nation, where really there should be looking at policy and legislation and really looking at the direction that the nation should be going. And that's where the discussion comes on with the legislative branch. But the the legislative branch should be focused on that. The legislative branch should be focused on managing. Here's the laws. Here's what we're supposed to be doing. This is what we're supposed to be looking at. How do we get those things accomplished? How do we make these things work? How do we work with our communities? How do we work with our people?
Yeah.
And so, again, it's really working that, finding that common ground so both sides can begin to focus on those areas that are important and that are put in Title II.
Yeah.
And that way you have that separation. People can focus on exactly what they should be doing. And still, you have those discussions across the table. You may have debate, but you have debate. You don't fall into one side or the other and say, yeah, we're not going to move. You have debate, you find common ground, and from that you begin to develop processes and projects that are doable, and you see results at the end of the day.
What would you say, long-term effects? What would be the long-term effects if these branches don't cooperate with one another? I mean, I don't mean to be like a contradictory advocate, or if it's kind of a word or anything, but for example, who knows how long these divisions have been working together, been butting heads or being divided. I mean, our government's still intact. It's still working.
Well, it's somewhat working. But again, I think you can see if it goes somewhat to the extreme, you see where our federal government is right now. Our federal government is very partisan.
Yes.
And, you got individuals who are not even willing to listen to the other side. Right now, we're not at that stage. But again, what I'm looking at is really bringing that discussion back. I welcome debate because I did projects where the council in the beginning was very against moving forward with different projects we wanted to do when I was with the Division of Natural Resources. But then educating them and showing them how that could benefit the nation really brought them on board. And now you're seeing some of these projects are really benefiting the nation even after 15, 20 years of being in existence. You're seeing the benefits even today of some of the projects I was involved with.
I like that. We're always looking to the long term.
Yes.
Long-term results,
right,
as opposed to short-term. Although short-term does have its benefits, but long-term, I would assume, is better.
It's a connection. There are short-term things that we can do to get some things rolling, to build confidence in our government. Right now, we don't have that confidence in our government. I hear the criticisms out there. A lot of people do not have confidence in our government employees. There's a lot of good employees out there. They're trying to do their jobs. But again, I've been through that process with the Division of Natural Resources. We were able to look at how do we really get the buy-in that we need? How do we establish the direction so that the employees are all moving in the same direction? And in that aspect, they become more innovative, they become more creative, they begin to find solutions on making things work. And more importantly, they run the processes. So once they gain confidence that you have leadership that is supporting them, they're more than willing to come out and say, these areas need to be changed. These areas need to be looked at and possibly reviewed and either amended or changed. They can give some good recommendations where at the end of the day, you have even better processes in place. And as you can begin to communicate to the council, you help them understand why these changes are needed and what benefits would come out of them.
I like that. That's good. That's good. It makes me think of the you're heavily focused on teamwork is what I like.
I think right now there are a lot of opportunities that are before us. Even though we have a federal government and we have a president that's very transactional. He's a person that you either love him or you hate him. But that's from his rhetoric. But you have a president right now who's looking at programs and looking at different areas within the government, and he's wanting to turn that back over to further down the road or down the pecking order. And so, there's an opportunity for us to look at some of those aspects, and maybe there are things that the nation can do on its own better. And this might be an opportunity to gain some of that. For instance, the Southern Ute, the Tribal Energy Resource Act, TERRA, which was a part of the Indian Policy Act of 2000, I believe 2005. I was a part of that development. But the Southern Utes went out and they made amendments to the TERRA Act to where it's more beneficial to them. Now, the Southern Utes are in a position to actually move forward with the development of energy projects without having to go back to the Department of Interior or the BIA.
Wow.
They can do it on their own now, and they've got the approvals to do that.
Wow. Okay.
And so, again, that shows what's possible. And if we can begin to bring our government together and really start looking at these opportunities, there are others out there looking at leasing, looking at business site development, looking at these areas where we may be able to really gain some of that control and really begin to do things that would be more beneficial to the Navajo Nation without having to go back to the BIA for permission or the Department of Interior or any other federal agency. We can do what we want to do as we see fit. But again, that's going to take us out of our comfort zone, just like I am running for president. It's going to take us out of our comfort zone. We're going to have to learn as we go. But these are opportunities that could really benefit us looking into the future.
That's very cool. I really do like that. It is taking a leap of faith in everything that you do. It's always, trusting that the next step is going to lead to something else, and it's going to just keep going. It's just to keep going, keep moving, and hope that it's going to work out. I like that. Okay, so you have you've been doing this for a while now.
Yes.
You've been part of the governments. You've been a part of the presidencies. Let's go look back at some of your experiences. What I really like is on your website that you posted, you said you have obtained approval for the Navajo Gallup water supply project and assisted in negotiating the San Juan Basin water settlement in New Mexico. Water is a big topic, a huge topic, especially when it comes to data centers. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, before I answer that, Charles, let's step back just a little bit here.
Okay.
Because I think what I bring back to the nation, a lot of the candidates are talking about leadership. And they're saying that I can bring leadership to the nation. But there's two aspects really that people should start thinking about. There's leadership and there's management. One thing that I bring to the table is my managerial experience. I've managed union and non-union personnel in the mining industries. I managed a division of 500 plus employees. I've managed government relations offices within Arizona Public Service Company, as well as the Navajo Transitional Energy Company. I've been a CEO for nonprofits like ACES during the transmission period, the American Indian Science and Engineering Society. I was a co-CEO during the transition period. I was also a CEO for Four Corners Economic Development. So having that managerial experience, I was able to bring that to the Division of Natural Resources. And through that, we all began to move down a direction. And water is important. And some areas that we made some really big strides in was first, we developed an MOU with the Bureau of Reclamation. That brought in a lot of data and research information that we could utilize for the nation. And we took that information and we began to look at our irrigation systems. We looked at our dams. We went in and worked with BIA to restore and correct our dams. So those dams were safe. We wouldn't have any kind of a blowout and floods going down those washes. That was for Saley, Red Lake, mini farms. All those dams were upgraded and renovated. We did work on irrigation systems back in the 2000s with Ganado and with mini farms, and we even leveled farms and mini farms back then. But going to Navajo Gallup, President Kelsey Begay came to me my second day in office. He came down to my office and visited me. He asked me how things were going. And then he said, Mr. Trujillo, one of the major projects I want you to take hold of is the Navajo Gallup Water Supply Project. At that point in time in 1999, I had no idea what the Navajo Gallup Water Supply Project was. But I learned, I was able to develop strategic partnerships with the city of Gallup, with San Juan County, with the state of New Mexico, eventually with the federal government, with the Department of Interior. And we went and we began, and the Bureau of Reclamation, and we went and progressed that project. And we had our water department fully involved. They understood the directions and the results that we wanted to accomplish. We had buy-in by the employees. They took it from there, and I helped lead that effort. And we started the EIS, or the Environmental Impact Statement, on the Navajo Gallup Water Supply Project. About halfway through that EIS, my water department came back to me. And they said, Mr. Trujillo, we really can't go any further. I said, why not? They said, we don't have a source for this water supply project. And so I said, what do we got to do? And they said, we need to resolve the water rights between the Navajo Nation and the state of New Mexico. So that's when we got involved in negotiations with our Department of Justice in working with the state of New Mexico to come to a settlement or agreement on the water rights between the state of New Mexico and the Navajo Nation. We were able to get an agreement. That agreement was signed. Once that agreement was signed, then we continued with the EIS. The EIS was completed and approved. The record of decision was signed. And now you see the eastern portion of that system has been built. We're working on the western portion along Highway 491. It'll connect into the San Juan River, and water will begin to flow down those pipelines. The next phase to this is going to be start building the pipelines out of the main pipeline that's in place, so that we can get water to our communities.
Wow. And is that just for for household water, or is that for do we have any plans to do anything with that water?
Well, a lot of it is for household residency. This was back when I was with the Division of Natural Resources. It was determined that Indian Health Service as well as the U.S. EPA would take the lead in building or designing those lines going out. And that would also have to involve NTUA. But again, it would be domestic water lines that could be built and distributed to our communities along the way so that we can minimize, people having to haul water for use in their homes.
Yeah.
We have homes right now that are getting bathroom additions. They need the water connected so that they can fully utilize those bathrooms. Yes. So again, it's how do we get water to the Front Range along the Cheska and the Gutchkai Mountains, and then also on the eastern side of the nation. Because, I'm also looking at economic development. And the way I talk about economic development with people is to picture fire. You need 3 items in order for a fire to start. You need fuel, you need heat source, and you need oxygen. You put those 3 together, you're going to generate fire. I look the same thing with economic development. You got to have land, you got to have water, and you got to have some source of electrical power coming in. Yeah. You get those 3 pieces in place, you can really begin to look at economic development, bring in industrial or manufacturing or businesses. You can bring them in because now they have land, they have water, and they have electrical power to run their business. So, but you take one of those pieces away, you're not going to see economic development.
Yeah.
And so again, that's what I see with this Navajo Gallup Water Supply Project is it brings water. We have land, but we still have to work with our chapters and our permittees on that. And then with Light Up the Navajo Nation, NTOA is working to bring back the electrical power. And so again, having those pieces in place, chapters will have that opportunity to really start looking at economic development for their chapters and how they can enhance that. And more importantly, how do we begin to create jobs here in the nation?
Okay. That's cool.
So that's been my experience with water. I've been involved with negotiations with New Mexico. I believe that was the first water settlement that the Navajo Nation got approved with the state of New Mexico. They have been working with the state of Utah and the state of Arizona. Yeah. But again, that's what I was involved in. And eventually, I was looking at energy development. I was looking at running the division. I was looking at water rights. It kind of got really difficult trying to put enough time to each of these areas. And so I was a part of the team along with then Derek Watchman, who was the chief of staff for over OPVP. And this was during, I believe, Joe Shirley's, no, it was during Kelsey Begay's when we started this. And we were able to form the Navajo Nation Water Rights Commission. And that was created. And so that way I was able to give those responsibilities off to the commission, and they continued with the efforts that we started.
Now, is this the that pipeline from Gallup to Winter Rock? Is that part of that?
Yes. And again, there's still discussions going on. What I thought is we had that resolved because you're going from one basin to another as you cross the state line into Arizona. Mm-hmm. The idea was, how do we get water to Winter Rock? And so it was having those negotiations between the upper and lower basin states. Back in the 2000s, I was thinking that we had that resolved, but talking with folks recently, there are questions about what was agreed to then. I haven't really been involved in water rights since I left the nation. So I'm not fully informed as to what has happened. But again, we were looking at that and saying, as we take water from the lower basin, from the upper basin into the lower basin, are there areas where we can trade that off so that we can get water to Winter Rock? And that was something that we were all wanting to achieve.
Now, speaking of economic development, you also said, where is it? You extended the life of Four Corners Power Plant and Navajo Mine, generating $175 million annual economic impact in the Four Corners region. Talk about that.
Okay, this was, I left the nation in 2010. And I hired on with Arizona Public Service Company as their government affairs representative and community representative. I headed that program. And so APS was working with the Navajo Nation and BHP on extending the life of Four Corners and Navajo Mine. And I was a part of those. I wasn't exactly a part of the negotiations, but I was a part of educating communities and keeping the nation up to speed on what was happening with the negotiations and how those negotiations were going. Then we were able to get the lease approved by the nation. The nation extended the lease to 2041. Next was to get a coal sale agreement with BHP. So APS was in negotiations with that. We finally got an agreement with BHP on the coal sale agreement and water. I was supposed to fly down to Phoenix to witness the signing of that agreement. I got a call from my boss there in APS, and he told me, don't come. We're coming up. I came back up, and that's when I was informed that BHP decided to exit the project. They were going to leave Four Corners Power Plant. And so that's where we began to look at that particular issue. And APS began to pose the question to the Navajo Nation, would they be interested in buying Navajo Mine? That way we could extend the life of the Four Corners Power Plant. We were able to get different agreements in place. Then it was all turned over to the Navajo Nation. The nation created NTEC, and it was given to, or they were given the operation to begin to lead those operations there. As a result of getting that in place, we were able to get an agreement in place to extend the life of Four Corners Power Plant from 2015 to 2041. And that saved the power plant and the mine. And that operation right now still benefits the Navajo Nation. In this general Four Corners area where we're at right now, the general Farmington, Shiprock region here, I mean, we go all the way and we have impacts all the way into Kayenta. Those operations generate about $175 million of economic benefit for this region. That's looking at jobs.
Yeah.
That's looking at both direct and indirect jobs. That's looking at new businesses coming. And again, at this point in time, it's mainly Farmington that's seen that, but that's where the nation's got to really look at things and figure out how do we begin to take advantage of that in Shiprock, in Kayenta. How do we start looking at our business site development in those areas? But we're for the nation itself, of that 175 million, about 75 million is going back to the nation in royalties and taxes. Those two operations right now generate about 92 million in salaries.
Wow.
And so you see that, and all these employees have benefits. So many of those employees have retired. And a lot of them are now living on their 401ks and their pensions, and they're not a burden to the nation. They've got those savings in place. Yeah. Another important thing that these operations are moving forward on is how do they support Navajo contractors and vendors. And so right now they're showing that they're providing about $11 million in support, hiring contractors and vendors for those operations. So you can see the benefit that you're seeing right now with those operations and the fact that we were able to extend that. And we're looking at new projects that are coming up in the energy field. One thing that we need to really begin to look at is understand is that we're an energy resource tribe. We have resources. When the government first gave us the Dinétah, granted, it was our traditional land area, but it extended up into southern Colorado. But you look at southern Colorado with all the grass and trees, and we didn't get that back.
No.
But we got the areas down here, which the government thought was not really useful.
Just desert.
But what did they find? They found coal, they found oil, They found natural gas,
Yeah.
and now there's an opportunity possibly to be looking at critical minerals. But again, we have resources there that we can look at energy generation, and we're building on technology to capture different things. And that's what we did with the Four Corners Power Plant. When it first opened up in 63, we had particulates, we had sulfur dioxide, we had nitrous oxides. We had all that flowing out of the stacks. But now we've been able to capture a lot of the sulfur dioxides, a lot of the nitrous oxides, a lot of the particulates that used to go up, the ash. We've been able to capture those and collect those.
Wow.
And so now when you see that plume, about 98% of that's water vapor.
Huh. Wow.
And so when people call it tlid or smoke, it really isn't. It's water vapor.
Okay, I never knew that.
Yeah.
Wow.
So again, you have employees both at the mine and at the plant who are very cognizant, or they know those limitations and controls. They work hard to stay within those compliance areas. Navajo Mine now has a number of reclamation awards that they've been awarded by the federal government. Four Corners Power Plant, they used to have a lot of problems with different types of emissions. They've been able to curtail and contain those. Now the only thing that they're beginning to work on now is carbon capture. What do we do about the carbon that's going up in terms of greenhouse gas emissions?
Yeah.
But again, that's where I say, people say we need to transition. We're going to transition from fossil fuels to something. I look at transition more as diversification, because how do you replace $75 million a year going to the nation?
Yeah.
I mean, people right now are concerned about services. What happens if you take out 75 million a year? Where are you going to get those services? Not from the federal government.
Yeah.
And so again, it's how do we build on that? And as we've shown in the past, we've improved the operations at Four Corners Power Plant. We've improved our capabilities to reclaim land. And in fact, Navajo Mines, one of the first mines in this whole western portion of the U.S. that's returned land back to its original owner. We returned, or I should say we, NTEC returned 2,000 acres back to the Navajo Nation. They meet all compliance aspects. The nation can do what they want with that 2,000 acres.
Wow.
So again, we get better as we begin to really work in these areas, and those are opportunities I think that we're missing. Yeah, siya Arvin Trujillo yun siya. Sisakagin sila. Atanhe ba siya chin? Ashin da siya chedo na kay Dinétah siya nala. Hello, I'm Arvin Trujillo, and I'm running for Navajo Nation President. I bring decades of proven leadership and executive managerial experience in both the public and private sectors, along with 12 years of experience working within the Navajo Nation Government. I understand how our government works and what it takes to bring people together to solve issues and deliver results. My campaign is focused on restoring collaboration among our three branches of government, strengthening services for our communities, and creating opportunities that bring our youth home to live, work, and build their futures on the Navajo Nation. To learn more about me, donate to our campaign, or sign up to volunteer, visit Trujillo for nnp26.com. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on, so you said diversification, right? What are your thoughts on including solar and wind energy?
We need to look at those aspects. How do we look at solar? But again, solar comes back saying, okay, how do we look at land use? Because you have panels over the land.
Yeah.
And so they are looking at innovative ways of placing those panels so you still have access to land. We got to take a look at that. Solar, wind is there. But again, as those windmills turn, they do make noise.
Yeah.
And you're running where wind blows, so birds follow those paths.
Yeah.
And you have issues with those, with wildlife. But again, how do you begin to mitigate that and bring that into a diversified portfolio so that we're not just dependent on fossil fuels?
Yeah.
But that opens up other doors too. Is hydrogen a viable process that we might be able to take a look at? Are there other types of energy generation besides solar and wind. Pump storage, hydro electric development, where you run water through turbines from a high elevation down to a lower elevation, and you pump the water back up. That's another way to generate power. Do we have opportunities in geothermal? Should we be looking at that? And so again, it's really looking at what is available. There are really a lot of new things happening with technology. When people look at fossil fuel development, they're looking back at the 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
We were just in the infancy of really looking at the environmental aspects and how do you look at reclamation, how do you look at these different areas. The technology has gotten better. Our knowledge base has gotten better. Let's utilize those to figure out what would be in the best interest of the nation, but also bring needed economic development. We have the opportunity to generate the power. We're beginning to build infrastructure to bring the water. And we have land available. Now we have the ingredients to start looking at communities to say, would a industrial site be something that would benefit these series of chapters here, or a manufacturing facility, or whatever? How do we begin to look at that type of development? So again, my idea here is, how do I get our young people back home? How do we create jobs? How do we bring housing? How do we bring infrastructure? Because a lot of our young people, they like what they have off the reservation.
That's true.
They flip the switch, the light comes on. They turn a faucet, water is available. They put their thermostat on, the heater or the cooler comes on. They flip a switch, the internet is on. They can get on their computer. They want those types of conveniences, which now are really utilities that people expect. So how do we begin to bring that back into the nation so that we can bring our young people? Because one statistic that really concerns me, Charles, is the census. In the 2010 census, we had 170,000 Navajos that lived on the reservation. In the 2020 census, we went down. We went from 170 to 165,000 in 2020.
Wow.
But off the reservation, in 2010, we had about 150,000 Navajos living on the reservation. In 2020, we had 260,000 living off the reservation. We grew by 100,000. We went from 300 to 400,000, but all that growth was off the reservation. Why? We don't have things to bring our people back home. They can't build a career. They can't have housing. They don't have access to the internet, power, running water. How do we begin to develop a plan and a viable plan to really begin to bring that infrastructure to the nation? And maybe it starts by selecting communities that we work with, and then that's the catalyst to start working across the nation. But again, it's something that we got to take a look at, because right now we're losing our best and our brightest. They're all moving to Flagstaff, Phoenix, Albuquerque, Salt Lake City, LA, Washington, D.C., etc. They're all over the country, but they're not here. They're not in Chinle chapter. They're not in Ashchiti. They're not in Window Rock. They're not in Loop. We need to bring our young people back home.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. Looking at from my perspective, it's just like, it's also, they're thinking about like what they call a third space, and also making friends. There's no economic growth. Just thinking about driving from Windrock all the way to Gallup just to do something. And I see that with the res, and it's hard, because you want to be able to have community, you want to be able to have friends, you want to be able to just do things, and it's hard to do that. And I guess it does go back to building infrastructure, it does go back to building businesses, and creating that sense of community within the res.
It's building that community, and It's building a customer base. By that I mean, if we can find ways to begin to attract our young adults, our young people to come back home, businesses and entrepreneurs are going to see that. And as they begin to see that, there'll be those that will begin to look at, is this an opportunity for me to build something where our young people can come and congregate? And can I make a living doing that?
Yeah.
And so as we bring people back and they begin to see that segment of the population, I think you'll start seeing those things begin to develop. You're seeing that with some of the other cities across the country where they're seeing more young people. They're changing how they're structuring their downtown areas and et cetera to accommodate those young people, because you guys see the world a little bit different than the way I used to see it. And so how do they accommodate that? And that's where, again, I think we have the entrepreneurs to do that, but we've got to look at how do we build some business models so they can do business on the nation.
Yeah.
Because right now you have really strong entrepreneurs, but because of what we have on the nation, they're locating in Farmington, in Flagstaff, in Albuquerque, Phoenix.
Higher traffic.
Yeah, higher traffic. People are willing to open Navajo-style restaurants in Phoenix. I mean, things like that. You start seeing a customer base building.
Yeah.
And that's what we need here. How do we begin to develop that customer base? Because I look simply here on the west side of Farmington. And Farmington has had a number of job opportunities building in the technical areas, in the trades areas, welding, carpentry, etc. And so a lot of the smaller companies in Farmington have retooled because of COVID. They used to go out and service all the oil and gas fields, but that's now hasn't gone away, but it's minimized. So they retooled themselves to do other things. So they need people to man those positions. Young Navajo families are doing that. But they're not living here on the reservation because we don't have a place for them to live. So you look at the west side of Farmington, you see all that new housing development that's happening on the west side of Farmington on top of Harper Hill. Most of those are young Navajo families.
Wow.
And they've got jobs. They're buying homes. They got mortgages. They're doing all the things. And you go look, and they're taking care of their homes. Why? Because they're investing in their home. They're paying mortgages. This is money coming out of their pocket. And so they're going to take care of that. And if they decide to move somewhere else, they can put their home up for sale. And so they're building equity in that home. How do we begin to look at that with the nation? And I think there are possibilities on ways we can do that through government programs and guaranteed loan projects. But again, it's really looking at that and working with the federal government, working with state governments, working with our own people to figure out how do we begin to do this so that we can begin to look at providing housing for our folks. And then we can begin looking at where do we congregate these industrial sites, because people don't want to commute 1, 2, in some cases when I was with the Division of Natural Resources, I had people I knew that were commuting like 2.5 hours one way to work. I said, that's crazy.
It is. Yeah, it is.
And now with the price of gas, there's no way that individuals could really keep up.
Yeah.
And so again, how do we begin to look at those aspects, and how do we begin to bring diverse stakeholders together to really find solutions? And I'm not saying that something like this could be done in 4 years. But what I am saying is we can get things started, much like Navajo Gallup.
Yeah.
We started in 99. Construction started in about 2010, 2011. We got the eastern portion done. We're working on the western portion, 2026.
Yeah.
We're still building that infrastructure. The important thing is that we're still building that. We're getting it done. After that's done, we got to start looking at, okay, we got a pipeline going through here. How do we now distribute that water out to the communities along the route? So that's going to be the next phase of that.
I'm going to ask you an interesting question, and I want your thoughts on this. What is our goal? Is it to be, I guess it's a layered question. What is it? What does it mean to be Navajo? And what is our goal? Is our goal to be more American? Like, what is, I guess when it comes to like infrastructure and development, like we're focusing, our mind is kind of like focusing on the next generation and focusing on how we can bring more people in. But what about the elders, their generation, their way of life, their perception on how, not really caring for the big cities, not really caring for, all this, glitter and glamour. What are your thoughts on that?
We need to really look at how do we balance. I mean, you said it earlier before we started the podcast. We have different layers within the nation. There are different audiences. There are different age groups. We have people who are Christians. We have people who are traditionalists. We have people in Native American church. Spiritually, they're different. We have the age difference that is there. We have those that are very focused on the agricultural aspects of lifestyle. You have others that are looking more in, what can we do on the tech side or even the industrial side. So there's a multitude of layers within the nation. What I'm looking at here is saying, okay, how do we come together and have those discussions to figure out what is it we want? Because we need ways to bring revenue in, because we don't have property taxes. We don't have income taxes. Those are the traditional ways that governments are funded and run, is through property taxes and income tax that come into their coffers. We don't have that. But what we do have are resources. And in the past, we've also always looked at resource development as a way to generate revenue to come in. And what I'm looking at there as you talk about that is saying, how do we begin to look at our traditional lifestyle, the importance of culture, and begin to bring that in concert with what we need to look at as we industrialize ourselves as a tribe. And the example I've always utilized with this are the Japanese. The Japanese were completely defeated at the end of World War II. They had nothing. They had two cities that were totally devastated by nuclear bombs. And so they started from zero and began to build themselves up. They incorporated some of the Western philosophies in terms of business and financing. And it wasn't all done in a generation. There was a time, like when I was a young boy, you would look at Japanese products and you say, well, I know it's going to break. And so that was the mentality people thought about Japanese projects. But they continued to develop to where now, where does all of our electronics come from now? The Japanese.
Yeah.
But more importantly, as you read literature, they've incorporated a lot of their traditional processes, like the samurai process and the yin process, into business development. And they found a way to begin to mesh the two so that they were seeing the benefits of developing an industrial piece so that their people could prosper, because they live on an island. They had to bring all their resources in.
Wow.
But at the same time, they were able to also incorporate cultural aspects. I mean, they do things, they have a certain ceremony when you exchange business cards. They have a ceremony for that.
Wow.
And that's a way of that samurai process on how you would exchange identities. And so again, they've incorporated that. That's what we would need to do. Now, to me, the biggest prospect or the biggest accolade I have for the Japanese is they've become important business-wise to the point to where you have non-Japanese people
Really?
learning Japanese. They want to speak the language
Yeah.
and understand why, because they see that as respect to the Japanese people, especially people now who own Honda and Hyundai and Sony Electronics and etc. They're wanting to find a way to make an impression on these industrial giants.
Yeah.
They're Japanese. And so they're coming in and saying, yeah, you started and you understand the Western philosophy, you negotiate and etc. But you have certain ways that you do that, and it follows the Japanese protocol. So we are going to learn your way.
Wow.
And so again, it didn't happen in a generation. It took probably a couple generations to
Yeah.
get there. But again, we need to start looking at that and seeing how do we mend our agricultural aspects with our industrial aspects. How do we bring jobs? Because, Charles, if your mom and dad had a farm plot or a grazing permit, individuals really can't make a living
No.
doing that with the amount of land that would be allocated. And so it'd be real difficult for you to say, that's what I'm going to do for a living. You're looking for other opportunities. And that's not to say that there are those that are doing that, and I'm really happy for them. They found a life that they enjoy, but how do we now begin to look at bridging these differences and finding common ground
Yeah.
so that we can look at development as a goal, but not totally degrade our land, because our land is important. Our culture is important. Our language is important. And so how do we begin to incorporate that as we begin to look at development for our own selves? Because again, we don't have those property taxes. We don't have those income taxes. And we have to find ways to really begin to generate revenue so that we can feed into the government, thereby providing services and direction for our people.
That's a good example. I really like that Japanese example.
Okay.
It really, really paints the picture of, what's the possibility of what we can accomplish and what we can do.
Yeah.
And it's kind of crazy too, because Japan, the Japanese culture has such an influence on the younger generation. It's just through media, from music to shows and movies. Our young people, our Navajo people, are really invested in the Asian culture, and they just absolutely adore it. They love it.
Yeah. I mean, but it started from basically where we are.
Yeah, yeah.
That's where it started. And they built and they grew, and yes, they made mistakes. But as they grew, they learned, they developed, and you see where they are now. And they are quite an influence across the nation as well as the world.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. When you vote for the next presidential candidate, you have to actually be present at a chapter house, correct?
Well, you don't really have to be. There is absentee balloting.
Oh, there's absentee ballot.
Yes, you can go to your local election office. They do have absentee ballots available. You can get that done. You can also check the election office website. They have a schedule for a lot of the major metropolitans surrounding the Navajo Nation, where they're going to Indian centers, etc., where one, you can register to vote, and two, you can get absentee ballots so that you don't have to drive to your home chapter to vote. You can put an absentee ballot and send that in by mail.
Okay.
So those are opportunities to help save, because I know for some people that could be a real difficulty because they may be on the job somewhere off the reservation, and they just won't be able to make it on July 12th to come into their chapter and vote.
Yeah.
But they do have an absentee ballot process, as well as the opportunity to go ahead and get yourself registered.
Okay.
And you can check the website for forms on that, and also timelines, looking at a number of the municipalities that surround the Navajo Nation on when they'll actually be going to different venues there within Phoenix or Salt Lake or Albuquerque.
Yeah.
And you can do the paperwork right there.
Right on. Cool. And is there a way to determine if you're registered or not?
I believe you can call the election office
Okay.
to find out if you are registered. If nothing else, if you're not sure, I would just go ahead and get a form out and get things registered. I think you'll need to send a CIB and some documentation, but the best way to do that is if you can find a location where they are actually registering individuals. That'd be the best way to go. That way you can take your CIB. I think you need a social security card and your license to get registered. So check the website out, and they'll have the information on there.
Okay. Well, I think we're just about done. Is there any final words that you'd like to say to the viewers or people listening?
I would. I think one thing I just want to stress is the fact that I've not only been in positions of leadership with the nation as well as with outside companies and nonprofits, but I've managed these organizations in many cases. So I've got that managerial experience. And that becomes critical as you start looking at the nation, because you have an executive branch that consists of 18 divisions, over 5,000 employees. And plus that, you've got 13 enterprises that you should be interacting with. And you're still working hand in hand with the council. You're still working with the judicial branch. You got to work with the 3 states that we're within, and you got to work with the federal government. So again, having that managerial experience and understanding the government really can benefit myself, really, as I look forward to possibly taking this position. It gives me the necessary insight that I need to be looking at. I don't have this period of trying to learn
That's true.
how to run the government or what it entails or what the government is about. I understand the importance of developing those critical partnerships at the federal, state, even county levels. I've worked with chapters on different projects. If you go back to my website, www.trujillo4, and it's spelled out for, nnp26.com, you'll see I put the 5 major projects looking at, I was in a leadership role of expanding 491 and 550 from 2-lane to 4 lanes. That's still benefiting us.
Yeah.
I was a part of the negotiating team. We did the natural resources side, getting an agreement with the Hopi tribe. Department of Justice did the legal side, got a settlement with the Hopi tribe. We combined those settlements, and as a result of that, the Bennett freeze was lifted under Joe Shirley's administration. We got that done. I was a part of that team. As you indicated, I was a part of the Navajo Gallup Water Supply Project and negotiating water rights between the state of New Mexico and the Navajo Nation. We built a hotel over at Monument Valley.
Yeah.
It was during my tenure as leading the division. I worked with my Parks and Recreation Department, the late Ray Russell, who was then director of the Parks and Recreation Department. He and I worked with an entrepreneur as well as with the Resources Committee. And we together really worked hard to get that hotel built. And that shows the importance of having that relationship with the legislative branch, because you can get those kind of things done. So those are some of the projects that I've been involved in. And as you also indicated, being a part of negotiating teams where we got the lease, the EIS completed, we got environmental equipment installed, and we got everything in place so that the life of the Four Corners power plant and Navajo mine were extended 25 years to 2041. And we're still seeing benefit in revenues and in jobs from that whole operation. So looking at leadership and management, Those are important aspects, and people need to be thinking about that as they look at their next president. And again, I'm really looking at three basic platform areas. The first is really restoring that working relationship between our branches, between the legislative, executive, and the judicial branch, so that we work together. Because if we're not working together, if these branches are not working together, nothing gets done. Nothing gets done. Second is economic development, but economic development so that we can bring our young people home. Getting different projects in place, looking at how we can develop these projects and have items that are in fruition. Like I said, the power plant, the hotel, the roads. You know, I did a lot of work with the irrigation piece of it, things, getting dams renovated and restored, looking at energy policy, energy development. I mean, all of these things have benefited the nation even today. And so again, how do we really look at economic development in a way that brings jobs and then brings all the necessary aspects for having those jobs: workforce development, housing, needed infrastructure. We need to bring those pieces in too. So again, bringing diverse parties together to figure out how do we get that done. And then my third platform piece is returning customer service and service delivery back to our communities and people. Right now, as I'm speaking with people and listening to them, everybody has complaints. You know, veterans are not happy with different things. People in the health areas are not happy with things, and we're not getting hospitals built, etc. Business people, you know, it takes years to get a business site lease and to participate in the Business Opportunity Act, and etc. You're looking at energy development. You know, how do we open up our Navajo government for business? Right now, we have that aspect that we're closed. But what I want to do is bring service delivery back, bring customer service back, work with the Navajo employees, show that we have support for them, help them so that we can all begin to move in one direction, figure out what the priorities are. You talked about them: short phase, mid-range, long range. What should we be focused on, and how do we get those necessary services out to the people? Because again, it really comes down to those three, but I really look at that economic aspect, because business is looking for certainty. And right now we're not showing that. And because we don't have that certainty, we have capital leaving. There are people that are willing to bring money in to help build different things. But as they see things happening with the nation, they're saying, well, I don't think so. And they're taking their money elsewhere. And so we need to really work to rebuild that trust within the business community, rebuild that trust within our own people, so that we can really move forward on really meeting those three simple areas. I think if we can meet those three areas, we will start the process moving in a positive manner to bring new development, new growth, and more importantly, bringing jobs and opportunity back to the nation so our young people can take advantage of that. So that's my closing statement. And, you know, I know the government, I know the process, and one of my, as you earlier noted, I think one of my strong points is being able to bring diverse stakeholders together and finding that common ground and really looking for ways to obtain the results we need. So that's my closing statement. And I'd like for that vote. I would really be thankful, humbly thankful, if you would consider and provide me your vote on July 21st.
Right on. And then you guys have your presidential debate on.
Yes, there'll be a presidential debate at the Phil Thomas Center on June 18th here in Shiprock. And then the Northern Agency Veterans Association is also going to be holding a debate up at San Juan. I believe they're looking at San Juan College, and that would be on the 19th. Those are the two that I'm aware of now, and I think there's one in July in Flagstaff.
All right. You ready for that?
I think so. Again, I just want to talk with people and get to know them, and they get to know me, and we'll just kind of take it from there. But looking forward to hopefully meeting a lot of you or having a lot of you listen to me as I explain what I'd like to try to do and who I am.
Right on. All right, Arvin. Thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Sure thing, Charles. And again, it's good seeing you.
Yeah. All
Take care.
Whatislife is a marketing through podcast platform that utilizes conversations to promote opportunity exposure. If you have a business, product, or an idea that you wish to share, contact us at www.whatislife.blog or message us through a social media platform to be a guest on our show.